What's up, dudes? Wade Universe here, your Majesty Geeky and Nerdy, and welcome to a new episode. You know, there in the comic book industry is a man who is known by many as pretty much the man who basically fixed comic books. The man, the myth, the legend who created some very weird and bizarre characters. The man, the myth, the legend who really identified what a lot of superhero teams and superheroes were. That man be Grant Morrison. Yes, Grant freaking Morrison. You know, the dude worked on Animal Man, the dude have worked on Doom Patrol, the dude have worked on everything to his best ability. Especially with a lot of people, especially for me, as I'm have ordered and still waiting on the Doom Patrol Netflix series, which is heavily based on Grant Morrison's run of the Doom Patrol. He really identified who Animal Man was, and he really identified who Batman was back during his run. He really gave a new perspective on Superman. I mean, the dude, when he gets a hold of a character, he's like, just leave it up to me. Just leave it up to me. And the dude was the guy who identified who Dick Grayson was when he took over the role as Batman and everything. So, I mean, he really put things into a brand new perspective. But how did he do for the greatest of superhero teams? Well, allow me to explain. I finally was able to basically check out and read Grant Morrison's Justice League of America run, or JLA run. The JLA have also come out in a hardcover omnibus that is way too expensive for my blood. Yeah, it costs right now over $200, and yeah, two-ish for my blood. Maybe if it came down to like something like $60 or $70 or even $80, I could see myself paying that. But at over 200, no. So anyways, basically imagine a book that looks something like this, but bigger. Yeah. Anyway, when Grant Morrison took over the JLA, he really started like back from the beginning point of the Justice League of America when they first appeared in the 1960s and to coming up until today, and showing what this team is made out of and what this team can do. Morrison really goes all in with the team, man. He identifies who every single different character and every different superhero is, and basically he explains them in a way that I remember growing up as a kid with the Justice League Unlimited and the Justice League Animated series. So he basically took the same perspective of the different team. So you have Batman, and he really identifies Batman the way that I grew up with Batman. A hard-boiled detective who's going into his detective work, who thinks his way out of certain situations before he heads in battle first. He is not an idiot. Batman is wicked smart and everything. Identifies him when he, working with Oracle back after the Killing Joke when she got disabled. Barbara Gordon, that is. He takes on the moment when he took on Huntress as a possible sidekick for him. He really delves into who Batman is at this point. The next person that he really identified for me was Superman. Good dear God. I mean, I should have started with Superman first, but DC is the house that Batman built. What now? So with Superman, he really made him the Superman that I grew up with, the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, or Dean Cain version of Superman. I had to think of his name like Dean Cain. But yeah, he really identified who the characters were and everything. There was a moment when Superman is going up against, or the Justice League is going up against like archangels and the demons of hell and the angels from heaven, and Superman is fighting both of them off. And there was a moment when Wally West looked up at Superman and he goes, "That is the Superman that I remember." I'm like, that is the Superman I remember too, who risked everything in his life to break down the barriers and just become the superhero that we all know and love. And that is what really identifies Superman here for me. Even after the Death and Return of Superman arc, when he comes back as a blue Superman, he is still the Superman that I grew up with. He's the Superman that I remember. He is the Superman that basically came in, did a picture, and said, "I'm here now, and I am going to kick all 10 kinds of ass." That is the Superman that I remember. Wonder Woman, he really did a superb performance on the Wonder Woman. Um, Basically, Wonder Woman is supposed to be this huge icon, of course, for young women and for women all over the world, and she still is that. Of course, she is still the icon that we all know her for, and especially there are moments when she is talking to some of her comrades. I remember like reading like when she is talking to Wally West, who is the Flash in this, and she goes to Wally. She goes, I don't get to talk to you guys as much. It always seems like we're on the verge of battle, but it seems like that I want to be on touch with you guys on basically a human side of life. That is my Wonder Woman. I mean, there are moments when she will charge headfirst in a battle, but during the Justice League animated series, I do remember her going like, I don't know who Superman is, but I don't know who Clark Kent is. I know who Batman is, but I have no idea who Bruce Wayne is. And it's like he or she trying to say the same thing. Like I know who my comrades in arms are, but I don't know anything about you outside of our own life, and that is something to consider for Wonder Woman. She still charges into battle. The Amazon woman at the Amazon that we all know her as, but you got to consider that there are half the time where she, is protecting her comrades, and she's like, basically, who is the man behind the mask? That is something to consider in all of this. Um, for the Flash, Grant Morrison really captures Wally. He is the Wally that I remember and the Wally that I grew up with. You got to consider back when I was basically getting into comics, the Flash at the time was Wally West. I didn't have Barry. I didn't even know Barry Allen was the Flash until like years later when I kind of discovered it on my own. But every single version of Wally was basically Wally West the Flash. I didn't have no Barry Allen. I didn't know who Jay Garrick was. It took me a long time to realize who these other Flashes were. But he really captured Wally West because there's a lot of moments where Wally will banter with somebody else, and I'm like, that's Wally. That's Wally West. That is Wally. Like there are a lot of times where he bantered against Kylo Ren or the Green Lantern in this, and I'm like, that's Wally. That's Wally West. Like that's the Wally that I grew up and know. Because Wally always bantered with the other superheroes, and it's like, even at points when he's looking into the face of death, he still has a one-liner to deliver. It's like, that's Wally West, that's the Wally I grew up with. Um, but yeah, I mean, like when Wally looks up at Superman and identifies who Superman is, when he goes to Batman about certain things and he understands what Batman really is. It's like, this is the Wally West that I grew up with. This is the dude, the youngster, who pretty much only took on Flash's perspective when he got wiped out not too long ago, and he's trying to really uphold that authority of the Flash in his own rights, and he actually does a pretty dang good job of keeping up like who the Flash is in his own rights and his own perspective. When it comes to Kyle Rano, that is kind of hard because okay, the Green Lantern I mostly grew up with, and the one who is my personal favorite, is of course Jon Stewart. Am a huge fan of Jon Stewart. He's the one that I grew up with in the Justice League animated series. I love, I think it was Phil Lamar who did the voice acting in that. Heavily, respect the hell out of Jon Stewart. But when it comes to Hal Jordan, I haven't heard of Hal until much later in the Green Lantern universe. I think it was episode of Superman the Animated Series, wasn't it? When Hal first appeared. No, that's Kyle. Kyle and Hal, I think, appeared in Superman the Animated Series. But when it comes to Kyle, I don't know much about Kyle Rayner, and that's why I can't really say much about him. Because I don't know who Kyle Rayner is. I only know that he is kind of like Guy Gardner. He's the hot-headed one. He just charges in the battle first, asks questions later. But there's a lot of moments that make me respect Kyle in this. There was a moment where he and Flash are under danger, and he risked everything to save Flash and himself, his partner, and his comrade in arms. And I'm like, that's kind of the Green Lantern that I basically grew up with. It's sort of like Morrison combined a little bit of Howard Jordan and Jon Stewart and put them together into this Kylo Ren. There's a bunch of people who think Kylo Ren is an idiot, and I have to say, out of respect, Kylo Ren is not an idiot. Kylo Ren is, a Green Lantern. Green Lanterns are supposed to be, who they are and everything like that. Green Lanterns don't ask questions first. They basically charge in the battle when it's necessary to. So for Kyle, there's not a whole lot that I can say about him other than that, at the moment, I can respect him for who he is as a Green Lantern. But basically, I know more about the other Green Lanterns than I know about Kyle. Martian Manhunter, I think that Morrison really identified who the Martian Manhunter is in this because it reminds me a lot of other people who identified a Martian Manhunter. He is an alien who does not understand the way of life, but he's trying to. There are moments in this where he tried to protect his teammates using his telepathy when he cannot be there. And, there's a lot of moments where he just charges in to save his teammates and worry about the consequences later. That is the Martian Manhunter that I know. That's the Martian Manhunter I grew up with. And whenever I was reading through the dialogue of Martian Manhunter, I heard Carl Lumbly's voice in my head, and I'm like, yeah, I can imagine Carl Lumbly, saying this line over the dialogue because Carl Lumbly is my Green Lantern. Wow, Martian Manhunter. Right, and there's also a lot of stories where Morrison really delved into the different scenarios of the different villains for these guys. Like when they go up against Lex Luthor, he really gives Lex Luthor basically Clancy Brown, the Lex Luthor from the animated series. Like he's evil, he's mischievous, he's cannabis. He will turn against you at any moment that he can. He really identified who Amazo was. I mean, he really delved into more about the Shaggy Man. And the Shaggy Man, a lot of people think is like, he's just a cyborg who was like Bigfoot. No, the Shaggy Man is not meant to be messed with, people. He basically is a Amazo, but a lot more powerful than a Amazo. He gave them a different team of basically metahumans to deal with, and he gave them all basically tragic backstory that these are men and women who were at war, who transformed into the metahuman group, and they're being turned against by the government to fight the Justice League. And when they realized that, they decided to band together and become their own superhero team, which I thought was very, very cool. Morrison gets a lot of crap that he creates a lot of like weird and obscure characters, and he does. I mean, Morrison does what he does best. But the one character that is the most obscure to me here is Zoriel, the Archangel that he created. So Zoriel basically worked as an Archangel, basically like Gabriel and some of the other Archangels from Christianity and also the Bible and Genesis and everything. But he really does a good job identifying who Zoriel is. Like, he's just not the typical angel who sits in there and he's like, I'm the blessing of God. No, this is an angel who will punch you in the goddamn face if he sees necessary. There are a lot of moments where Zoriel really shines, where he just is like, oh, want to take down my brethren? I will pound you in your frickin' face. And there are moments where he does that, where it's like, nope, nope, boom, and he will just punch a person halfway across the frickin' world. Like when he first appeared, when the angel and the demons were fighting against each other, he went in, charging into battle to save his own brethren and everything. This is the Zoriel that basically I'm introduced to. I already like the character. I think he's really cool. He has a really cool design and everything. Also, Morrison, I think it's the guy that created Prometheus, who's basically a more screwed up version of Batman. That's all I'm saying. You need to read the backstory for Prometheus. It is really screwed up. Like, how he identified the Waynes back in the day and how he identified his backstory and what happened to him. It's like, if you think Bruce Wayne's backstory is a little... you haven't seen anything yet. Like, basically, when... I think, like, when they handed, like, Morrison a note that said, create new supervillain called Prometheus, nothing more, nothing less. He's kind of like, oh, I got an idea. And he basically made an even more screwed up version of Batman. All I'm going to say is Prometheus is a Batman from another universe, but he's even a more screwed up version of Batman. That's all I'm going to say. So, is Morrison JLA worth reading? Yes. Basically, how he starts it out, he kind of starts it out like Independence Day, like aliens attack, you're getting to take down the aliens, boom, done. Justice League gets formed, and while even still in the book, they're taking on different characters, like Morrison really identifies Plastic Man as being like this really wacky and outrageous superhero, which he is. He really identifies who, Aquaman is, this protector and savior of Atlantis, but he also cares about his fellow brothers and sisters in arms, and he wants to do what's best for them in combat and also while protecting the city, which he does. So, Morrison just takes everything over from the other superheroes, and he's just like, okay, let's create and let's just put a little magic into that. Whenever Morrison takes over a superhero, like of any caliber, people always go like, he's gonna do something crazy and messed up to them. He's Grant Morrison. If he doesn't do that, there's something wrong with Grant Morrison by this point. But we don't need to worry. Every time somebody is like, Grant Morrison is writing, let's just say, for example, he writes a character that he never wrote before. I don't know. Like, let's just say, like, Grant Morrison takes over the Teen Titans, or Grant Morrison takes over this team or that team. I'd be like, you got nothing to worry about. He will take care of it. He will look into it. And he respects the hell out of the superhero that he takes over. A lot of people are like, but he's so messed up and everything. I don't care. Do you see what he did to the Doom Patrol? He really identified them and turned them into a basically band of mischiefs and whatnot. We have nothing to worry about. Like, when a lot of people talk about the Doom Patrol, they really talk about the Morrison, basically, creation of Doom Patrol. And I'm like, fair enough. Like, he created these different rag band of teams and whatnot. So I just kind of want Morrison to go into like a different business and company where he creates superheroes of his own caliber. Is what I'm trying to say. Like, there are people who create their own superheroes and basically have their own shit versions and whatnot. I just want Morrison to go into a place and be like, I am Grant Morrison. You are hired. And he writes up like the most screwed up like superhero origin for the characters. Because he's Grant Morrison, it's what he does best. So, JLA is really a bang for your buck, but would I pay as much for the omnibus right now? Probably not. I probably would pay for each different single issue and variations of it and whatnot. So, I wouldn't really be like, yes, the omnibus is what you must pay for it. No, I wouldn't pay for the omnibus. It's a bang for your buck because you're getting the entire story in one setting, but the price is a little too steep for me. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely check out Just JLA by Grant Morrison. Really heck of a run. This is Wade Eagle signing out and saying, remember, if you see Superman fighting angels and demons in the sky, you better bet your ass that is the Superman that you grew up with. And until next time.